We're going to talk further about this now. Bring in Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, a political analyst who's also been listening in. Prof, thank you for your time and your patience. About 45 minutes into that briefing, what are your main takeaways?
No, thank you very much for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers. First of all, I must commend Mr. Magwenya for doing what he was employed to do, and that is to speak on behalf of the president. Whether then what he did meets the facts, it's another story. But the reality of the matter is he has done his job, and he has done a sterling job for that matter. But I think he started on a wrong footing when he opened his remarks by saying that the president inherited a weak state, a corrupt state, and all the likes. Because the question that was asked by Spamandla Goke, in fact, was on point, saying that where was he when all of these things were happening? You recall that when the president made a statement about the so-called 9 lost years, it was not even in the country, it was in Davos, Switzerland. So the question then may be asked as to whether it was appropriate for the president to do that in the first place. That is, going to a foreign country and then telling the international community that I'm assuming this position, but I'm inheriting a weak state because of the 9 lost years. So I think that was a wrong start, because it created the impression that the President Ramaphosa was never in government at the time, and then these things happened, and then he came in as a messiah, which is not factually correct. Otherwise, as for the rest of the documents, for the statements in terms of providing context, yeah, he has done a sterling job in defending the president. Of course, some of the issues are debatable, but he was just doing his job.
Just on the issue of President Ramaphosa and the state capture years, it came up, didn't it, when he went to the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, and among the reasons he gave was that he thought initially that he and others would be able to fight state capture from within government, from within the governing ANC. Will that ever be sufficient as an explanation for why he perhaps wasn't more ferocious, more public in his opposition to government corruption, as has been contained in this report?
No, that argument will never stand, my brother. It will never stand, because recall that when the president was invited to give evidence before Justice Zondo, he was invited first as the head of, as the deputy president of the ANC and then deputy president of the country. And yet he was implicated as an individual and was never afforded an opportunity to present his side of the story as an individual and not as an office bearer. So that one will still remain a question. But then even when he appeared and then tried to indicate as to why his inaction should be condoned, his arguments were not convincing. Because if you say that you were reluctant to indicate to the nation and in fact to challenge the authority, as it were, because you were worried about your job, why was he worried about his job if his intention was to save the country? Because, of course, there was no monetary value for him. He has enough money. He has amassed enough money. There is no doubt about that. So whether you lose your job or you retain your job is neither here nor there. Ordinarily, as someone was determined to deal with the rot that he's referring to, he was supposed to have been steadfast, but he failed to do that. So that argument will never stand.
Vincent Magwenya has also spoken on the criticism of the president this past weekend. Comments attributed, former President Jacob Zuma perhaps made the most scathing allegations against Ramaphosa, calling him corrupt and accusing him of treason. There were also complaints about the state of the country and the ANC from former Presidents Thabo Mbeki and Kgalema Motlanthe. Magwenya, in defending him, basically rattled off a list of achievements to do with the investment summits that he's convened in recent times, how he led the country through the COVID-19 pandemic, and how he inherited a state that basically had been brought to its knees almost by government corruption, i.e. state capture. Do his achievements, do his areas where he's been effective outweigh his shortcomings as a leader?
It's all in the perception. It depends which point you want to emphasize, because both of them are there. If you want to look at the president and focus on his achievements, as Mr. Magwenya was doing, you will definitely find examples to support that. There have been reports of a job summit. There have been reports of investment summits. There is no doubt about that. Everyone could see that. But then the question is, if you come from a layman's point of view, those who are supposed to be the end users, the question becomes, have we created more jobs as a result of these job summits? Has the economy of the country improved as a result of these investment summits? Are we better off now than we were under former President Zuma? So those are the questions people will be asking in assessing the extent to which the statements made by Mr. Magwenya can be authenticated. Of course, using facts, as he emphatically stated, that you cannot just argue out of the blue. You have to use facts. I'm just using some of those facts.
Just on that then, Prof, in the interest of time, can it be argued that because of the context in which Ramaphosa has led, given what was already an economy that was struggling and the fact that COVID-19 from 2020 worsened things in a way that governments all across the world had not been able to prepare for, can we say cut him slack because of that?
Yes, of course. We can cut him slack on that one, like we do with all other governments that have failed during COVID-19. They will then say that the reason why we failed is because of COVID-19 and not because we're incapable. So we cannot, therefore, treat him differently from that one. That context will still stand.
Let's talk about the state capture report and what is still the pending announcement of action that's going to be taken against cabinet members who appeared as implicated people at the inquiry. The president, we're told, is still applying his mind. How prickly do you think that's going to be for him, considering that A, this is an ANC conference year, and B, he would be hedging his bets as well politically? Do you think he'll wait until after December, if he's still president, to act?
No, on that one, I think Mr. Magwenya made a valid point to say that we cannot just act haphazardly just because there is pressure mounting. On that one, I give him. You are absolutely right. And it's also correct that the president will have to first touch base with the implicated members of the executive. That is also correct. He's also right in saying that you have to seek legal advice. That is what is supposed to happen. Which then means that we cannot expect any action anytime soon. At least I don't foresee any changes before the 2020 December conference of the ANC. So then the assumption is that the president might be counting on the fact that he will still emerge victorious and will still be the president of the ANC after December. And then at that point, he will have assessed the situation, he will have satisfied all the other requirements, and then he will be ready to make the pronouncement. But I don't see any urgent action being taken by the president at this point.
Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, good to have your time, sir. Thank you very much.